So this is going to be a weird one, and I'm going to try to address both old and new subscribers simultaneously. So I will deal with Aaron Smith-Levin very quickly, but he is critical to this because that's what this is all about in terms of credibility. Namely, if you are proximate or close to someone who is very questionable and has done illegal and very vicious things, therefore, are you guilty? And might you be guilty of the same crimes or worse? Well, the answer is no. But let me just deal with Aaron and then deal with Saberspark, who's the main subject. So, Aaron Smith-Levin is a famous YouTuber who did some videos, good or bad, on Scientology. But for the last couple of years, he's been enmeshed in a lot of scandals. And we have massive receipts for almost everything. We've got text messages, a police report, eyewitnesses down to the nitty gritty details. We have lots of evidence he's a thief, a liar, a manipulator, a con artist. You go through the list actively. I want to stress this: actively protect predators like Brett, Tommy Scoville, the lifeboat, etc., etc. I'm just getting that out of the way because it seems like Saber's in a very parallel situation, and it's uncanny how similar the situation is. So let us jump into it. So what happened? Well, apparently there's this very odd YouTuber. I like Kim Possible. I'm not going to use the full name. She is shortened as KP. So apparently KP and Saberspark have a relationship going back years and years. Saber's upfront about this. Yes, they were friends, but Saberspark and her basically drifted apart. Nothing really happened, and life goes on. He became a much more successful YouTuber, and there you go. But apparently, Saberspark's editor did have an incident with KP, and KP and the editor talked it out in a voice call, and it's been recorded and shared, although the exact version of what really happened is still unclear. But either way, the editor apologized, said, okay, I'm sorry I did that. KP was like, all right, whatever, you're going to go your way, I'm going to go mine. And there we are. So the only thing that really Saber is guilty of is hiring somebody questionable to be his editor. That is about it. So it's not really that much. But out of nowhere, I mean nowhere, KP just hinted at that maybe Saberspark was guilty of the R word against a young girl and promised a massive expose video. She's unfortunately taken the video down because there was such a huge backlash. One, the tone. She was doing a lot of um, awful jokes and memes within the presentation, which, given the seriousness of the subject matter, is like it's not advisable to do that. So the presentation was bad. And she also did an interview where she outright admitted that they didn't really have solid evidence that Saberspark was guilty of anything, but that KP believed the victim and we should just trust the victim. But she did admit, no, we don't have anything serious. Like, we don't have serious evidence to bring to the police. So it's like, okay, well, where does that leave us? So Saberspark did a very effective response video on his own channel. It's gotten a lot of traction with good reason. I think he answered most questions. There are one or two alarming things he did not address, which I will bring up at the conclusion and finish off with Aaron when we get back to that. Let's go through with what KP was up to because it's very suspicious and very alarming. So apparently KP was working in conjunction with this weird Twitter account run by several people, and this account, Brony Fan Don't, has had a crusade. Again, this is where it gets legit. They have brought up some alarming things with Black Griffon, who is friends with and associated with Saberspark. But let's be very clear. They're two different individuals. Black Griffon, with everything about him and his situation, it's very questionable. There are questions about him, whether what he did was criminal. But then they moved on to Saberspark, presumably because Kim had this incident with the editor and they wanted to malign Saberspark because he's a much bigger creator, very popular, making a lot of money, and he would be an easy target. So KP and Brony were feigning that they were independent of one another, but they were clearly working hand in glove. But then when the video came out, there was a huge backlash. Brony decided to backstab KP and admit that actually KP was coercing the victim. They were allegedly trying to help through their video. So it just collapsed into a complete mess. First, let's cite Brony's very shocking standard of justice. This is from a Twitter. This is Brony. Because internet justice is infinitely more plausible than courtroom justice, you say there's no justice. But everyone knowing of his deeds and losing his status isn't nothing, not even close. So the aim was not to put him in prison, not to go to a courtroom, that just have him lose a lot of subscribers, which he has. He's lost thousands and thousands of people who automatically think that he is the R word based on just the testimony of these several women, even though they have no evidence and admit, no, we don't have evidence. And there's additional evidence that they are outright liars as well. For instance, speaking on the Griffin issue, Brony asserts on Twitter, Casey was even at Griffin's wedding, to which someone responded, Henry, I always knew fact checking wasn't your strong suit, but Casey and I weren't at Gabe and Claire's wedding. And then Brony responds, I know you're the reason Casey is lying. The more you try to twist the narrative, the more we're forced to talk about you. So it's just going on with these people. Okay, now you're going to hear audio from Kim. Now, I actually am going to defend her a little bit, but this is still very alarming. Apparently, she was helping to construct the testimony of the victim and use that against Saberspark.
Is that Saber, by coerced consent, basically raped someone. So I worked with the victim pretty directly throughout all this. I helped them write the testimony that was on Twitter.
Now, a lot of people are using this to discredit KP. I would defend her slightly that there's nothing suspicious per se in helping a victim quote with their testimony. But then things got really crazy when Brony came out after the backlash because the video didn't do so well and admitted that, yeah, KP is coercing the victim and Brony. Okay, that's not good. So it just seems that these people were trying to take down Saberspark because he's a big YouTuber and went with some flimsy evidence. Now, it could be the case that Saber is guilty, but if so, we should have some supporting pieces of evidence, right? So let's get back to Aaron and conclude this clown show. Now, with Aaron, we got to be totally honest. And I want to be very careful. I am not saying he is guilty of the R word. However, if tomorrow a woman came forward, whatever age, whatever ethnicity, whatever, right, maybe they were from Scientology, if they charged Aaron with the R word, that would have a lot of credibility because he's been caught lying, committing criminal acts, and manipulating various people over and over and over again. And I literally just did an expose where he was caught red handed, apparently paying off a woman to do propaganda work for him. So, not a nice guy, not a good guy. Not necessarily guilty, even if he's accused. We have reasons to think he might be guilty. We don't have anything with Saberspark, in contrast. We don't have anything. But now let me address the elephant in the room, and this is also parallel to Aaron and his situation with Tommy Scoville, right, who has clearly been convicted of, to put it mildly, victimizing a young girl and victimizing many other women. And Aaron has spoken out against Scoville, but not his full record. So what is the problem? So Saber has an association with Black Griffon, and there are many legitimate and serious allegations against him in terms of gaslighting, coercing people, and possibly, yes, the R word, but at a bare minimum of manipulating his fan base. So there's just a lot of tricky issues with Black Griffon. Saberspark in his response video didn't say anything. He is mentioned, that is it. So Black Griffin is mentioned, but the larger controversy, he's not addressing it. So that's a little suspicious. There's also the suspicious issue of attacking the Brony account, which I think is fair. However, it gets a little bit more complex because Brony is, yes, pushing this bad agenda with Saberspark, but apparently they were also doing exposés on Black Griffon. Now, I've noted earlier they may have been lying in one case about what happened with Black Griffon. Again, it gets tricky. That does not defeat entirely what they are saying. Mistakes can happen, mistakes will happen, but you are exposing a predator. So it's very tricky with Black Griffon. So just because a couple of dumb nutcases are doing the, well, detective work doesn't mean he's innocent. So in conclusion, it does seem Saberspark is totally innocent. He may have made questionable choices hiring this editor, as well as associating with Black Griffon, but that's their issue, not his issue. He is, at this point, totally innocent YouTuber, businessman. That is it, nothing more. That said, these Black Griffon issues are serious, so I think eventually he's going to have to deal with them. So he's kind of just kicking the can down the road. That is his choice. And at this point, KP is just dealing with a bigger backlash, and a lot of her very shady business practices are coming more and more open. And apparently, she's guilty of well, basically employing slave labor. So that's not good either. I guess as we wrap up, that yes, there is now an economy. And again, I can't say I'm not part of it. I've done a few videos on this. It's never been the main focus of the channel, but I have done now a series exposing various predators with the EFAP, with the SPTV, with Aaron, so on and so forth. Again, if you want to do this work, that is fine. There is money to be made. You can make a name for yourself. But I think you want to be very careful. If you're going to make these accusations or facilitate accusations, I think it's proper to do some double, triple checking. And here they just clearly did not. They just ran with the narrative. They want to believe this victim. That is fine. But you have to be upfront what you do have and don't have. But clearly, this dream of making money, getting clout, and becoming internet heroes got the better of them. So now Brony and KP are not friends anymore, and they're fighting one another. Apparently, this Brony account was held by several people. They're fighting over who is going to control the account. It's become a big mess. And it could very well be that Saberspark is guilty, but at this point, we have nothing. He is totally innocent, zero evidence he's guilty of anything, except making some poor judgments about his past friends, ironically, including KP. His mistake was just getting involved with this woman in the first place, and that's where we are. But maybe this woman who is accusing Saber of all these things is correct, but if so, she also made some really bad choices in picking these people as her champions because clearly they are just a bunch of idiot clown people who are not taking this at all seriously and doing this for the wrong reason. And it's just become a massive big mess. And the backlash they're experiencing is harsh, but it is well deserved. So hopefully they'll apologize to Saberspark. He will move on. They will move on. But he is threatening legal action, which he probably should pursue because yeah, this is really outrageous. You're just going to throw the R word so arbitrarily. That does a lot of damage to real victims and is going to create, which is already happening, a very fear filled climate where nobody trusts anyone and nobody cares about these accusations because too often they're based on nothingness. So that's where we are, sadly. So I do think Saberspark did answer most things effectively. But he did leave a few areas alarmingly untouched, and hopefully he will address that in the future. But that is his responsibility. And there we are.